Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborn. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned along their journey and share them with us. As always, the show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods that everybody hates. We use this method about 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, or endless social media posting. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and the link to that will be in the show notes below. For today, our special guest is Michelle Steffes. She is the owner of IPV Consulting, providing experience in leadership and self-mastery for multitudes of organizations and their executives. So, Michelle, it's great to have you on the show today. And my first question I always love asking is this: if you were able to go back in time when you started your very first business, what's the number one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
Oh, great question. And thanks for having me, Jason. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say it would be don't hold back. Don't let the critics rule how you should and shouldn't move forward. You really got to have enough self-confidence and stamina and integrity in your own ability to move forward no matter what happens.
Yeah. Speak on that a little bit more, like the whole critic side, because there's obviously the outward critics, but there's also the inward critics that we have in ourselves as well. And that's true for not only when you're new in business, but as you develop and maybe been in business for a long time. What are some lessons you've learned on to be able to quiet not only the external critics, but the inward critics as well?
Well, that's probably one of my favorite questions you could ask. The inward critic is there for all of us. I don't care who you are, what your background is, we all have it. And the best way to deal with it or overcome it is to rewire it. And that's what I'm big into is neuroscience, neuroplasticity. So I'm going to give you a quick little rundown on that and what I had to do to make it happen. So
Yeah.
for that very first, or it was the second year, I guess I put in 55 books that I had read. And in that time frame, I also spent a lot of time studying neuroscience, over 10,000 hours of study by the time my business really took off. But basically, you have 100 billion neurons in your head. You have since you're born, and you're constantly wiring those at 400 billion actions per second. And with that wiring, you're creating what is called networks. So you have a network for driving, your morning routine, evening routine, but you also have networks for any trauma, doubt, self-sabotage that you've entertained over your lifetime. Some of it was just self-inflicted. Some of it was put upon you by your culture, your upbringing, or whatever beliefs that you were taught to believe to, walk out. And so what the idea behind neuroplasticity is to begin to rewire by pushing your thought processes towards who you want to become. And that begins with having a vision statement, which I always encourage all of my clients to write a personal vision that you can align with and begin to align your decisions and goals with it, but then also have specific materials then that you're going to input to rewire. Now, the cool thing about neural networks is that neural pruning takes place when you do that, which means that your neuron can only hold so many connections. And as you force the electrical energy at 400 billion actions per second towards making new neural networks that will align with your vision, then the old ones literally fall off the neuron. A good example for me would be algebra. That ship sailed over 40 years ago. So, when you think about it from that perspective, you realize how neuroplastic you are and how you can end the self-sabotage best by retraining and rewiring your brain.
Wow. Okay. Lots to unpack there. Let's say you'd mentioned something about trauma, you mentioned about experiences, could be background or whatever. Is there an example from, let's say, a business perspective, since this is geared towards business people? Maybe there was a trauma they've experienced personally or business wise, or something that they have just grown up with, a belief that they realize is actually subconsciously sabotaging them or holding them. What are some things that they could do to start to rewire that?
Well, I encounter that a lot, especially working with leaders one-on-one as well as in groups. And I like to call it cognitive dissonance. Many of you maybe have heard that term. And when leaders have that dissonance because of a trauma, because of some kind of experience that led them to believe they either couldn't do it or were not capable, or maybe just were fearful of failure again, because they've had that experience maybe too many times, or they've got too many people that they're allowing to speak into them that are very hurtful or damaging words that they're absorbing. So when we look at it from that perspective, that can happen to not only a leader, but even an entire culture can absorb that. And the leader, usually it flows downhill. So if a leader is self-conscious and feeling insecure about his own or her own ability, then that begins to reflect in how they lead and how they come across, shaking the confidence of the entire organization. So the only way out of that is to take that 30,000-foot view and really look at, first of all, inward as a leader, what are you doing and what are you allowing to fester like an infection in those neural networks that you've designed, but also to look at it at a cultural perspective. In other words, what kind of policies, how am I approaching people? How are they feeling or sensing the confidence or lack of in this organization? And that then begins to kind of deconstruct and then give you a chance to reconstruct the culture from a completely different mind frame. But it has to start with self-leadership. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. So the self-leadership, meaning taking full responsibility of where you are and making those decisions to change. Is that what you mean by that?
Absolutely, it has to start there. And leaders who tend to fall short and never really reach the pinnacle of their career are leaders who refuse to do that because of pride or embarrassment or insecurity of some kind.
Yeah, taking full ownership. Is there something that has happened in your own business where has seemed like a massive challenge or obstacle, and maybe even to a point where you were wondering, man, can I ever get through this? And if so, I'm sure there are many of those because we all go through them, but what would that be? And what are the lessons that you learned from that?
Well, I really think the biggest lesson I've learned happened right at the crux of the beginning of IPV Consulting, and that was, being in the corporate world for so many years and doing an incredible job, at least I felt so, and then having my position dissolved beyond my ability to do anything about it. And obviously, they patted me on the back, gave me a letter of recommendation, gave me severance pay, and said, go do what you want. But the
Mm,
crushing blow that it took to me had a huge effect on my ability to kind of see myself at a higher level than I guess I should have at the time. And that's why when you asked me that first question, it really struck me, because if we don't have the confidence in ourselves to build it and rebuild what's inside of us, we can't move forward. So for me to handle that desolation of my position at the time and begin to see a new future took some time and commitment to rewire entirely. And so I know I'm speaking to a lot of leaders that maybe are facing, potential mergers coming up. Possibly they've been, gotten too many blows from say, an autocratic leader that leads with a lot of fear and trepidation. And I know that sounds like it's almost impossible to overcome. But the thing is that we need to understand that what we do from the second we open our eyes till we close them at night is the game changer. So it's not just what you do at work, it's what you do with your brain when you wake up. Okay. So if you're getting up thinking about the most awful day from the day before, you're automatically wiring in networks or strengthening old networks from that trauma or that doubt or disbelief that are going to just make your walk that day that much harder, and you're going to come across more and more insecure. So you have to be willing to force your way through it and just stick with a routine. And that's why, I'd written the book, Greatness Through Daily Routine. It's so critical to understand that we have to look at our life as a whole, not just the workplace.
yeah, yeah. I was actually speaking to somebody the other day, and they were mentioning something along the same topic of that daily routine that you have to stick
Mhm.
with it, even when things get really tough. And I'd love for you to just expand on that and why, like theoretically, I think we all know that, but in practice, I don't think many of us actually follow through with those daily routines because we allow the challenges or the traumas that we're going through to override that and almost dictate our actions and almost hijack our mind. Uh, you'd probably be better speak on that. But any thoughts around that aspect of it, of just that daily routine and why that's so important, particularly when you are going through those challenges?
Well, that's the heartbeat behind what I try to teach leaders. And so I'm thrilled that you put it the way that you did. routine is absolutely the key. It's creating, a lot of times we talk about in businesses is creating systems, right? Systems are
Mm.
absolutely key for any organization. Doesn't matter if it's a Fortune 500 company, a global network company, or whatever it might be. It has to have systems in place to work. Well, why would your life be any different than that? If you're just
Mm.
flying by the seat of your pants, it's never going to work for you. So you've got to become consistent in what time of day you get up every day and why you get up at that hour. I started getting up at 4:30 in the morning, not because I like 4:30 in the morning. I stood in the bathroom and argued with myself for the first 10 minutes, several days, and
Yeah.
lost sometimes. But I did it because I needed to find a time frame where I could really fill my brain with books and teachings, audio trainings, all the things I needed to do, along with exercise, being fit, making good choices, writing out the day, being planned and effective in that day, almost like recharging your cell phone. You do it every night, right? Without even thinking about it.
Mm.
Well, you've got to recharge your brain, your motivation, your focus. It all has to be recharged every single day. And the more you get in the routine of doing that every single day, you'll notice a difference. And I can back that up not only in just logistics, but in biology, because what you're doing is you're releasing a ton of dopamine, serotonin, instead of adrenaline and cortisol. So dopamine and serotonin are, it's the motivational, the reward system that's built into us through neurotransmitters or neurochemistry. And so you
Mm.
want to release that in just huge abundances in the morning so that it carries you through the day with a different posture. You're going to walk with executive presence. You're going to talk differently. You're going to stand taller. You're going to come across more authoritative. You're going to feel more confidence and drive because you spent the time to fill your heart and mind. So my
Mm.
4:30 hour, became my gold mine for my business, which caused it to double over and over and over again every 6 months for the first 2 years, and just expanded into a global organization or agency. Now having a podcast that reaches over 125 countries, and having written 3 books and working with so many large companies, I've learned the value that is in being consistent with your routine, and even in your evening routine, instead of just walking along and hoping things are going to turn out for you, and oh well, maybe I'll fit it in here or maybe I'll fit it in there. It's never going to get you to your destiny ever.
Mm. Mm. I love that. I love everything you're saying, Michelle. I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God, yes," because it's so so important, and I've seen that true in my life as well. And we're getting close on time, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this because I know for me and many people that I speak with as well, sometimes that routine feels restrictive. It's like, well, no, I want the freedom. I think a lot of people want the freedom. So I want to I want to do this, I want to do that. And what I've found, and still am learning over years of this, is the more routines I put in, the more freedom I have, which seems counterintuitive. So I'd love just to hear one or two thoughts around that as well.
Well, you put it very well. I don't know if I need to add anything because you put it so well, but I'll just give you my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Routine is a word that sounds, kind of like a stigma. And for some people, they hear different words in different ways. But routine does set you free entirely because it energizes you and generates within you integrity, self-integrity. So, in other words, you know that if you can commit to an exercise routine every day, reading every day, being consistent with, recharging yourself every day, then it kind of gives you the confidence to have the energy then to confront or have those tough conversations that you need to have in love. It gives you
Mm.
the energy to get that project done, to write that book, to do what you need to do to get that promotion. It just kind of pushes you through the day in ways that nothing else can. And if I can make mention, this is the book I'm talking about. This is the
Yeah.
blueprint for designing that life. Reframe and rewire.
Amazing, amazing. I love it. Absolutely love it, Michelle. Well, over the next, let's say 2 years, what are the goals with your business? What are you wanting to achieve?
My achievement is actually aligned with where I am in life as well as business, and it is to continue to expand my speaking portion of what I do and really begin to go more global than I've ever been. Now, I am global in terms of virtual, but I'd like to do more travel and be
Mm.
engaged with more larger audiences and organizations that want to learn either about leadership or self-mastery.
Yeah, amazing. That's brilliant. Well, Michelle, for people that are wanting to have more information about getting in touch with you or what you do, what's the best place for them to do that?
Well, you can find me at ipvconsulting.com. That's going to be the best place, but also I'm on LinkedIn and on Facebook, Michelle L. Steffes, and also ipvconsulting.com.
Amazing, amazing, wonderful. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute privilege having you here. And as a reminder for everyone, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way to close deals that doesn't rely on any of the old traditional methods everyone hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. That's Jason A. Osborn, and that will be in the show notes below.